Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. I'd like to start with something very personal. I've been in a plane crash which completely decimated the whole aircraft upon landing. I came out of it alive. 2 emergency landings, also in plane journeys. A fatal car crash which left me completely paralyzed. I share this experience with you very briefly to highlight what it means to come back, never to give up, keep learning, and continuous improvement in life, whichever way your journey takes you. In my case, that journey was mostly with the United Nations. I've lived in more than half a dozen countries around the world, visited about 100 countries, starting with UK in London. That's where I studied and graduated or qualified as a chartered accountant. Before that, I'm originally from Hyderabad, and I've kept very close ties to India, to Hyderabad throughout my life. And after London, my journey took me to Geneva in Switzerland, where I was 33 years with 2 different organizations, Geneva, Philippines, Germany, with climate change and migration. And I'd like to share with you what that journey was all about, what it taught me, and how it can also help you in your own individual careers and journeys and paths that you will take in the future. So, most of my life, as I said, was with the United Nations. United Nations is a large, very complex organization. When people talk about United Nations, they usually think of just one entity, mostly with the General Assembly or the Security Council, which is based in New York, but that's far from the truth. There are tens or maybe even hundreds of organizations that are attached and that make the United Nations in different fields. The central purpose of the United Nations is to bring the countries, 193 plus countries, together to find solutions, to discuss global issues. And that is what shaped my personal journey and life until now, and has, to a certain extent, made me a global citizen. And that's what I would encourage all of you to look into, and to become global citizens. It's extremely challenging, but also hugely satisfying. And in that context, what I wanted to share with you is the 3 areas. One is multilateralism, migration, and climate change. When we talk about multilateralism, as I was mentioning, United Nations is all about multilateralism. In simple terms, what it means is that countries around the world, they need to face global issues: environment, climate change, security, peace, justice, and so on. And there is no way each individual country or even societies can tackle those when those issues are of global nature. They face the whole humanity, and they need to be addressed. And that's where the United Nations comes in. And the way United Nations works is through multilateralism. That's what multilateralism is all about. That is where countries come together, representing the societies, representing each one of us through national representation, to focus on global issues and discuss those and come to agreements that are then binding on all those countries, and through those countries to the societies and the individuals and citizens of the world. Now, given that complex arrangement of the way United Nations work and the multilateralism is supposed to function, it is heavily bureaucratic, very slow, and can be frustratingly pessimistic situations that can be created, as we are seeing now with the wars in Ukraine or the Palestine or in other places. But keeping those aside, those are still very bad, very complex situations. There have been many areas where United Nations have contributed to the society, to the world at large, in many different instances, as I said, in peace, in security, in finding solutions to global conflicts and environmental issues. So multilateralism is the center of the United Nations. And it is very important for all of us to understand the importance of it, because we live in an extremely interconnected world, and that is growing in complexity and interdependence. We are not isolated, no matter whichever way you look at it. Every country, every society is now more and more interconnected, interdependent. When I say interconnected, it's true mostly now with technology, internet, World Wide Web. That's why it's called World Wide Web, and we are connected socially, culturally, physically, for education, for trade, for exchange of information, no matter where we are in the world. And that has shaped our societies over the years. We are very interconnected, we are very interdependent. COVID was a very good situation, I would not say good in the sense, but good to illustrate how interconnected and interdependent we are. A small virus that was generated who knows where, some people say China and other people say in different places, that spread throughout the world and brought the whole world to a standstill. And we lived through that over 2 years, and you all know how horrible it was. So that's what I mean with that we are so interconnected and interdependent. And as young students, soon going to go to universities and to the real world, you need to fully understand and appreciate the significance of that interdependence and interconnectedness. So multilateralism is all that's what it's all about. And United Nations is an organization that was created more than 75 years ago after the Second World War, is what it is to bring the different countries together, to discuss, to debate, to find solutions to those global problems. And my experience has been in two of those organizations, one dealing with migration, the other one with climate change. Migration. Migration is an extremely important phenomenon that has been with humans from the beginning of times. We migrate. Humans have migrated for a variety of reasons, mostly for survival, to find better opportunities, to run away from disasters, conflicts, human or man-made disasters. So that has happened throughout the ages. Many countries are actually built through migration. The United States is a very good example. Canada is a very good example. The original habitants of those countries were indigenous populations, and they don't exist anymore. Australia is another one like that. And those have been inhabited by migration that has happened over the years, and look how successful those countries are. So that is international migration. There is international migration. There are about 280 million international migrants at any given point in time these days. That's about 4% of the population, 280 million. And then there are about 70 million who are internally displaced because of conflicts, or growingly, increasingly because of climate change, driven by the droughts, rising sea levels, loss of agriculture, vegetation, and people move as a result of that. And then there are about 40 million refugees who are fleeing conflicts in many parts of the world. And then there are internal migration. In India is a very good example, from rural to urban areas. So migration is a phenomenon that has been with us for centuries and will remain so for the foreseeable future. And that is something that I want all of you to be aware of and to recognize the importance of it on the one hand, and also how to see it. Because unfortunately the media today, and in many countries, migration is characterized and displayed as something very negative. That the fear of the other, somebody else is coming and taking over our lands, our opportunities, but that is not the case. for majority of the people who move from their usual places of residence, no matter where, either within the borders or beyond the borders, it is a positive phenomenon. You have to look at it over a longer period of time. They contribute, they build societies, they bring cultural diversity, food, clothes, music, arts, architecture. So migration is something which is an extremely important phenomenon. And going forward, and especially for all of you, I see there will be a lot more opportunities in migration around the world. And that is because, especially the Western world, there is aging societies there. There is loss of population. Populations are declining. Whereas in Global South, India in particular, and Sub-Saharan Africa, there is a huge bulge of youth population. And the only way that youth population can be accommodated economically, socially, and meaningfully engaged is through those opportunities. So it's a simple demand and supply scenario. So there will be continued demand in the Western societies where the populations are declining, and there will be need for younger people that they cannot produce from one day to the next. So therefore the supply from countries of the Global South, especially India in particular, and Africa and other places, they will be. So there has to be a possibility for managing that migratory flows. And that's where one of the organizations that I was with for 27 years, International Organization for Migration, an extremely important organization that manages migration, that facilitates regular, humane, orderly, and dignified migration from one country to the other for the benefit of all, the migrant himself or herself, the sending country, and the receiving country. So, in one way or the other, you all will find yourselves going forward in the future in some sort of migratory status. And it's important to recognize and see where the opportunities will be. There will be enormous opportunities going forward. So we have to be aware of that and look at these organizations such as I said, International Organization for Migration, which is one of the biggest now organization within the United Nations system. And I foresee also going forward, as a result of climate change, the impact of climate change, which I'll talk about very shortly, that is driving people from many parts of the world to different areas of the world. So that has to also to be managed. And getting to the climate change, you all know what the implications are and what climate change is all about. Many speakers have talked about it. Climate change is an existential threat. And I strongly feel sometimes when negativity sets in, which shouldn't, that humanity is walking blindfolded into a climate catastrophe. Why? Because after the Industrial Revolution in the 1700, 1800, in the last century, since then the Industrial Revolution has relied on a source of energy, which is fossil fuels, to develop and grow, especially in the Western world now. India, China, and others are following that. And as a result of that, the accumulation of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere is resulting in global warming. You all must have heard of the Paris Agreement. That was the second organization that I was involved in, UNFCCC, that concluded the Paris Agreement. The goal of the Paris Agreement is to limit that global warming to 1.5 degrees global warming after the Industrial Revolution. By the end of the century, 1.5 degrees global warming by the end of the century, which is 2100. We are 75 years away from that, but we have already crossed that limit. And we are seeing the impacts of that. Heat, loss of habitat, rising sea levels, melting of the Arctic, Antarctic, and the cryosphere, and the displacement and the suffering that is being caused. And this is something that I personally believe, and I've seen it in many, many countries around the world. Every fraction of a degree of warming is resulting in a loss of lives and livelihood. So climate change is real, it's here, and it's now. And this is something that you all will be confronted with, and I strongly urge you to be aware of it, to know what it is, why it is happening, and how it can be reversed. And that's where the opportunities come, and I strongly believe that going forward, because of the climate change, the transformation, the transition that is happening, and we are all living through it, to the greener, renewable, more sustainable sources of energy going forward, is exponentially going to increase and provide enormous opportunities to all of you. No matter what field of study, what occupation, what profession that you will get yourselves into, greener, cleaner, more sustainable sources of energy and the way to operate and sustain our livelihoods will become the norm going forward. And that's where I expect all of you to be active, to take a leadership role in that transition. Because we are living through it, it needs to be accelerated to stop that global warming, to reverse it, and it can be done. And I strongly feel that that will happen regardless of whether anyone likes it or not, or the fossil fuel industry, the oil and gas industry limits it or stops it, or no matter which president in whichever part of the country or whichever part of the world will deny the existence of it, because that will happen. Because remember, the Stone Age did not end because of lack of stones. It ended because humanity found better ways of living and sustaining themselves. So that is what's going to happen with climate change. We will move away from fossil fuels to the greener and cleaner future. So I want you to think about it, and I wish you all the very best. Thank you.